People always said I was different. While the other kids in my neighborhood spent their afternoons chasing a soccer ball or glued to their video games, I was the weird kid sitting under a tree with a book about wild animals, reading about lions, wolves, elephants like they were old friends I just hadn't met yet. It wasn't just a hobby to me. It never was. I didn't just like animals. I felt them. Their fears. Their instincts. Their fight to survive. Somehow, in a world that often felt loud and complicated, animals made sense to me in a way people didn't. By the time I turned 18, most of my friends were still lost, unsure what to study, what to become. Not me. I knew exactly what I wanted. I didn't want a desk job. I didn't want money or fame. I wanted to be out there, in the wild, fighting for creatures who couldn't fight for themselves. I wanted to become a veterinarian. But not just any vet. I didn't want to spend my life in a small office giving rabies shots to pet dogs. I wanted to heal the broken, the forgotten, the endangered, the ones running out of time. So I worked, harder than I ever thought I could. I studied day and night at university, learning everything about animal health. But classrooms could only teach me so much. Every summer break, while everyone else went on vacations or partied, I packed my bags and left. Africa, South America, Southeast Asia, wherever there were animals in danger, that's where I needed to be. Those trips weren't pretty. There was no luxury, no comfort, just mud, sweat, sleepless nights, and the purest feeling I've ever known. I've stitched wounds on orphan gorillas. I've stood in the silence of a forest beside an elephant with eyes older than any human I've met. I've walked through poacher territory knowing full well the danger. But you know what? It never scared me. Because this is where I belong. Back home, I never really fit into the idea of what my family thought success should look like. They wanted stability, comfort, a quiet life. But I was never made for quiet. I was made for the wild, for the fight, for every creature that needed someone to care enough to stay, to heal, to protect. And I'll keep doing it. Not because it's easy, not because it makes me rich, but because this is who I am. This is my life's purpose. And I wouldn't trade it for anything. My father has always been a successful man, the kind of man who never knew what failure tasted like. He built his empire from nothing, a company so big and powerful that even now, I sometimes can't quite believe it's real. To him, life was a race, a constant climb to the top, and success could only ever be measured in numbers, in money, in power. He wanted me to follow in his footsteps, to inherit the family business. To take the throne he spent his whole life building. I understood that. I knew, deep down, he only wanted the best for me. A life free from struggle, from uncertainty, from scraping by like I've chosen to do. But the truth is, I never belonged to that world. Since I was a child, I've always been different. While other kids played sports or obsessed over video games, I spent my days buried in books about animals, wild animals, creatures that lived in distant forests or deserts, fighting for survival every single day. I wasn't just fascinated by them. I felt connected to them in a way I couldn't explain. I dreamed of becoming a veterinarian. But not just any vet, not someone who patched up cats and dogs in a cozy clinic. No, I wanted to be out there, in the wild, saving endangered species, protecting their habitats, fighting for creatures on the brink of extinction. And that's exactly what I did. I studied medicine, then specialized in veterinary science. But I didn't just stay in classrooms. I traveled the world. I joined wildlife rescue missions. I lived in places people couldn't even imagine, helping injured animals, rehabilitating orphan cubs, guiding lost bears back to their homes. I've spent nights in sweltering jungles, where the heat clung to my skin like a second layer. I've worked in deserts where the wind could strip your face raw. But those animals, those creatures, gave me strength. They gave me purpose. They reminded me why I chose this life. But to my father, none of it made sense. He didn't understand why I would choose this life, why I would trade comfort for hardship, money for meaning. Every time I came home, he would look at me the same way, with disappointment lingering in his eyes. "Ryan," he would say, "you can't keep wasting your life like this. Rescuing animals? That's not a future. The company needs you. This is your one chance." He didn't see what I saw. He didn't feel what I felt. Then one day, after I came back from a long mission in Africa, I found him waiting for me in his office. His face was stern, cold, determined. "Ryan," he said, "it's time to grow up. You can't keep living like this. The family business needs you. I need you to come home. Settle down. Get married. Take over the company. I looked at him, this man who raised me, who loved me in the only way he knew how, and I felt my heart sink. He didn't understand me. He never had. Father, I said quietly, my voice shaking, I can't do that. I can't walk away from this life. I can't abandon the animals that need me. This is who I am. But he didn't understand. His voice rose, sharp with anger. You're wasting your life. This company is your legacy. I built this from nothing for you. And you're just throwing it away? For what? For some wild animals. His words cut deeper than I expected. But I stood up. My heart was pounding. My hands were shaking. You don't understand, I said. You've never understood. I can't live a life that isn't mine. I turned to leave, every step heavier than the last. I'm sorry, Dad, I whispered. But I have to do what I believe is right. That was the day I made my choice. To walk away from everything. The wealth, the empire, the future he built for me. And to live a life I could call my own. I still remember the night I walked away from everything. The night I told my father no. Not maybe. Not, I'll think about it. A clear, sharp no, like the crack of a bone that's been under pressure for far too long. I was 25, old enough to know exactly what I wanted, young enough to still scare him with that kind of certainty. We were sitting in his office, that cold, glass cage he called a legacy, wall to wall with family portraits, business awards, deals signed and framed like trophies of conquest. And me? I was the last missing piece in his perfect little empire. You're my son, Ryan, he said. It's time you start acting like it. I knew what he meant. Take over the company. Marry the right kind of girl. Wear the suit. Shake the hands. Smile for the cameras. Be the next CEO in a long line of men who traded their soul for power and called it success. Except, I didn't want any of it. I never did. Dad, I said quietly, I'm not taking over the company. He didn't even flinch. He just leaned back in that ridiculous leather chair of his, the same one he sat in when I was a kid, lecturing me about responsibility while I snuck animal books under the dinner table. What did you just say? His voice dropped. I said no. Silence. Cold. Heavy. The kind that presses down on your chest like a weight. You're throwing away everything I built for you, he said slowly, like he couldn't believe it. And maybe he couldn't. After all, he built his whole life around control, around building walls so high no wild thing could ever climb them. But I wasn't built like him. I wasn't made for boardrooms or banquet halls. I was made for dirt under my fingernails, for long nights in the jungle with nothing but the sound of breathing creatures who didn't care about money or power, only survival. I don't want this life, I said. His hands clenched on the desk. And what life do you want, Ryan? Sleeping in the dirt? Saving animals that are going extinct anyway? That's not a future. That's a fantasy. I looked him dead in the eye. It's my fantasy. My future. You're being selfish. That one stung, but only for a second. Because the truth is, I'd spent most of my life trying not to be selfish. Trying to be the good son, the obedient heir, the quiet dreamer. But dreams have teeth. And mine were tired of being caged. I'm not being selfish, I said. I'm being honest. I didn't raise you to throw your life away. No, Dad, I said, standing up. You raised me to be exactly like you. And that's the problem. I could see it, the storm in his eyes. Fury, disappointment, maybe even fear. But I didn't flinch. I'm not going to marry someone I don't love. I'm not going to run a company I don't care about. And I'm not going to live a life that suffocates me, just so you can sleep better at night. He stood too. You'll regret this. Maybe. But regret was better than resentment. Better than dying slowly in a life I never chose. I'd rather lose everything than lose myself, I told him. And I meant it. Because I knew what was waiting for me out there. The wild. The unknown. The places no polished businessman would ever dare to go. I wasn't walking away from my future. I was walking toward it. That night, I packed what little I had. No inheritance. No safety net. No promises. Just me. And that relentless, burning love for creatures who didn't belong in cages, and neither did I. I left without looking back. Not because I didn't care, but because I cared too much to stay. It wasn't easy. I won't lie. There were nights I slept on dirt floors in remote villages. Days I worked for free, scrubbing down animal shelters just for a meal. There were moments I thought maybe, my father was right. But then I'd see them. The gorilla with sad, human eyes. The wounded lion limping back into the brush. The orphaned elephant calf that wrapped its trunk around my wrist like a child refusing to be left behind. And I knew this was my life. Chosen. Fought for. Mine. Years later, people would ask me if I ever regretted walking away. If I missed the money, the luxury, the name, and I'd tell them the truth. No amount of gold is worth a life unlived. No company, no mansion, no perfect family portrait can replace the feeling of standing under a bleeding sunset in the middle of the wild, knowing you are exactly where you're meant to be. I wasn't born to inherit a throne. I was born to fight for the wild, and I'll never apologize for that. Not to my father, not to anyone. I left everything behind that night. My last name, my inheritance, my future, the one my father had written for me like a contract I never signed. And I didn't run away to Paris or London like some spoiled heir having a midlife crisis. No, I went to Africa. It sounds dramatic, doesn't it? Like some cliché of a rich kid trying to find himself among the elephants and sunsets. But this wasn't some romantic escape. This was war. A war against everything I used to be. The plane landed in Kenya just after sunrise. The air hit me like something alive, thick with dust, heat, and the scent of earth older than memory itself. I had signed up to work for a wildlife conservation project near the Masai Mara, a remote area where endangered species still fought to exist despite poachers, habitat loss, and greed from men in boardrooms like the one I used to sit in. I wasn't a scientist. I wasn't a ranger. Hell, I wasn't even qualified to be here. But I could work. I could carry supplies. I could build fences. I could learn. And for the first time in my life, I wanted to earn my place. The days were brutal. The sun didn't just burn, it pressed down like a punishment. We woke before dawn and worked until the stars came out, our hands blistered from hammering posts into the dry, cracked earth. We built enclosures for injured animals. We set up camera traps deep in the bush. We repaired broken water systems so that elephants wouldn't die of thirst. There were no luxury hotels, no air conditioning. No one cared who my father was. Out here, your name didn't matter. Only your actions did. There was a woman named Amina, one of the field leaders. She had spent her entire life fighting for the survival of species most of the world would never even think about. One night, while we sat by a small fire, I asked her why she did it. She looked at me for a long moment before saying, "Because someone has to care when nobody else does." That sentence never left me. The work broke me down. Physically, mentally, spiritually. There were nights I lay awake in my tent, staring at the thin canvas walls, wondering if I had made the biggest mistake of my life. I missed showers. I missed real food. I missed the easy life I had thrown away like it was nothing. But every morning, when I saw a herd of elephants moving like ghosts across the savannah, when I watched a lioness teaching her cubs how to hunt, when I heard the laugh of hyenas in the distance, I remembered why I came. This was real. This mattered. This wasn't about legacy or profit margins or the sterile perfection of a corporate office. This was about life, raw and unedited. I remember the first time we found a rhino that had survived a poacher's trap. Its leg was torn, infected. It should have died, but it didn't. We worked for 12 hours straight, cleaning the wound, administering medicine, praying it would make it through the night. When it finally stood again, shaky, bloodied, but alive, I felt something I'd never felt in the boardrooms of my father's empire. Pride. Real pride. Not because I was powerful, not because I was rich, but because I helped save a life. Months passed. I stopped counting them. I grew thinner, stronger, tougher. I learned how to track animals by their footprints in the dirt. I learned how to sleep through the sounds of lions roaring nearby. I learned how to live without a cell phone or email or anyone telling me who I was supposed to be. I became Ryan. Not Ryan, son of a billionaire. Not Ryan, future CEO. Just Ryan. And for the first time in my life, that was enough. More than enough. But Africa doesn't let you stay comfortable for long. One night, we heard gunshots in the distance. Poachers. They had crossed into the reserve, looking for ivory, for rhino horn, for blood money. We drove for miles in the dark, our headlights cutting through the dust. When we found the elephant herd, I thought my heart would shatter. A mother elephant, shot, bleeding, dying. Her calf pressed against her, refusing to leave. I had never felt rage like that before. A deep, bone-cracking fury. But we couldn't save her. We could only stand guard, and make sure no one touched her body. Not for profit, not for power, She would die wild and free, not as a trophy. After that night, I knew I would never go back. Not really. Maybe someday I would return to the city, to the world of polished shoes and glass skyscrapers. But I wouldn't belong there anymore. My soul had changed. Out here, in the dirt, in the blood, in the relentless fight for life, I had found what I was searching for. Not freedom, not revenge against my father, but purpose. Real, unshakable purpose. People like my father will never understand that. They measure life in dollars. I measure it in footprints across the savannah, in the slow heartbeat of a rhino sleeping under the stars, in the quiet moments when the sun sets and the wild world keeps turning, untouched by greed, unspoiled by men like him. This is where I belong now, not because I ran away, but because I finally ran toward something real. Years passed, and as I worked tirelessly in the heart of Africa, the world around me continued to spin. But I had no interest in it. My life was no longer defined by luxury or expectation. It was defined by purpose. I had become something I never thought I could be, an expert, a leader in wildlife conservation. I had earned my place, my reputation, one challenge at a time. I had started with the basics, learning from the ground up, soaking up every ounce of knowledge I could. Over time, I became more than just a worker in the field. I was asked to speak at conferences, to contribute to research papers, and to advise on international wildlife protection efforts. There were moments I could hardly believe it. The kid who had once sat in a boardroom, pretending to care about things that didn't matter, was now a recognized voice in the fight for animals on the brink of extinction. People from all over the world listened when I spoke. I had become a trusted advisor, a go-to expert, and that was something my father had never believed I could achieve. But success, as I've learned, isn't just about the accolades. It's about the quiet moments, the ones where you realize how far you've come, even though the world might not know. When I sat in the dirt of Africa, watching a herd of elephants walk peacefully across the savannah, I didn't need the praise. I didn't need to stand on a stage or receive an award. What mattered was the animals I had helped, the lives I had saved, and the truth that, for the first time in my life, I was exactly where I needed to be. And then one day, the call came. It was late in the evening, after a long day of meetings and field work. The phone rang, and I saw his name light up the screen. My father. I hadn't spoken to him in years. I didn't even know if he still cared to hear from me. After I left, I'd cut ties completely. The anger I'd felt toward him, the way he had never understood me, the way he'd tried to mold me into someone I wasn't, it had all been too much to reconcile. But now here he was, on the other end of the line. I hesitated. I almost didn't answer. But curiosity won out. I picked up. Ryan. His voice came through the line, strained, tired, like it had been years since he'd really spoken to someone. It's your father. I didn't say anything at first. My heart was beating harder now. I wasn't sure what he was going to say. The last time we'd spoken was that day, the day I walked out of his life. I'm sorry, he said, almost too quietly. I owe you an apology. It wasn't what I expected. I had imagined he would berate me for not following the path he had set. I imagined him making excuses or telling me how wrong I was. But instead, there was just regret. A real, human kind of regret. I've been thinking about you a lot, he continued, his voice softer now, more vulnerable. And I was wrong. I didn't understand you. I thought I was doing what was best for you, but I was wrong. I should have listened. I had to swallow the lump in my throat. My father, the man who had spent years trying to push me into his world of business and success, was admitting he didn't understand, that he didn't know me the way I needed him to. It was like a weight was lifting off my chest, but it was complicated. Part of me wanted to be angry still, to tell him how much he had hurt me, how he'd tried to control my life. But another part, the part that had learned to forgive and to move forward, just wanted to hear him out. I know you're doing good work, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I see it in the news, in the reports. You've become something I didn't expect. And I just wanted to tell you. I'm proud of you. Pride. I didn't know how to take that. My father, the man who had once told me I'd never amount to anything if I didn't follow his path, was now telling me he was proud of me. It was a strange feeling. I wasn't sure how to react. Part of me wanted to embrace it, to feel relief. But part of me, the part that had been hurt for so long, couldn't just let go. You've chosen the right path, Ryan, he said after a long pause. I may not have understood it at first, but I do now. I was wrong to push you, and I'm sorry. You're right to do what you're doing. I don't know why, but tears started to well up in my eyes. It wasn't the apology I had been waiting for all these years, but it was something. It was real. It was acknowledgement. And for the first time in a long time, I realized that I didn't need his approval. I had already found my place in the world. But hearing him say those words, it was like a final piece falling into place. "I'm proud of you," he repeated. "I hope you know that." And I did. In that moment, I knew. Even if he had never fully understood me before, he did now. Even if he never accepted my choice to leave, to follow my heart into the wilds of Africa, he had come to see the truth of it. And that, for me, was enough. "I have to go," he said after a moment, his voice breaking. "But I wanted you to know. I wanted to say it before it was too late. Before it was too late." I didn't know if that was an admission of regret or a statement of finality, but I didn't need to ask. The call ended, and I was left with silence. But it wasn't the kind of silence that haunted me anymore. It was the kind of silence that came with understanding. I didn't need my father's approval to know I had made the right choice. I had already found my way, and I was finally at peace with it. I had built my life on my own terms, and for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. I continued my work with wildlife conservation long after I left Africa, and it became more than just a job. It became my life. The landscapes changed, but the fight remained the same. From the thick jungles of Borneo to the icy tundras of the Arctic, I found myself constantly immersed in projects aimed at saving the species most people had long forgotten. The thrill of working in Kenya, living among the elephants and lions, had only been the beginning. Now, I was collaborating with conservationists around the world, each project more challenging, more demanding than the last, but also more rewarding. I was part of efforts to protect the orangutans in Malaysia, working tirelessly to stop the deforestation that was tearing apart their homes. I helped lead anti-poaching campaigns in South Africa, risking my life to track down the criminals who would stop at nothing to profit from the suffering of animals. There were days when I thought I couldn't go on. The weight of the world sometimes felt like it was bearing down on me. I'd hear the screams of a baby elephant whose mother had been killed for her tusks, or find the lifeless body of a tiger, its majestic coat stained with the blood of a senseless kill. But in those moments, I also found strength. Strength in knowing that I wasn't alone in this fight, that there were people out there, just like me, who had given everything to ensure these creatures, these precious, living beings, would not vanish from our planet. I found a family in them, a family that didn't judge me by my name, my past, or the wealth I'd once inherited. I was part of something greater now, something real. And in that, I began to understand the value of freedom, the freedom to choose my path, the freedom to dedicate my life to something I believed in. I didn't need the luxury of boardrooms or the comfort of a penthouse to feel powerful. I didn't need to answer to anyone or prove myself to the people who had once tried to define me by their expectations. In the wilderness, in the struggle to save what little remained of the natural world, I had found my true purpose. I won't lie, it hasn't been easy. This life hasn't been glamorous. There have been nights where I've wondered if the fight is even worth it. But every time I see a rhino standing tall again after surviving a poacher's trap, or a baby cheetah taking its first steps in the wild, I know I made the right choice. I know that this is what I was meant to do. And that's the lesson I've learned. It doesn't matter what anyone else thinks of your journey, or how many times they try to drag you back to their expectations. It doesn't matter if the road you choose is harder, more uncertain, or less glamorous. What matters is that you are living for yourself, that you are following your passion, your heart, and your purpose, no matter what. I chose this path, and I would choose it again. I wouldn't change a thing. Every struggle, every sacrifice, every moment of doubt has been worth it, because in the end, I know I'm living the life I was always meant to live. Not because of my last name, not because of my father's empire, but because I found something greater than that. I found my freedom, my passion, and my purpose. So if there's anything I've learned, it's this: don't let anyone else decide your worth. Don't let anyone dictate your life. Only you can choose the path you walk. And when you finally find what makes your heart beat faster, don't let anything or anyone stop you from chasing it. This is my life, my journey, and I wouldn't trade it for anything.